And you know, Dr. Schuller talked a little bit ago about the skepticism of our time. I think people in our day and age are rightly a bit ambivalent about religion because they see religion sometimes bringing out the very best in people. Mother Teresa, who wins the Nobel Prize and speaks of love that is just utterly one with joy. She is constantly in a state of joy because she is loving, because she is giving. On the one hand, we have religions that bring out that best part of our nature, that quicken our natural impulses to do unto others. But then we also have cases where religion seems to bring out the very worst in people. The arrogance, the divisions, the fragments that keep us from being one with one another. So the Institute seeks this convergence between science and theology centered on Christianity. How can we understand better the ideal and the practice of love for humanity? For about 15 years, I've worked heavily with the Alzheimer's Association. I also work heavily with an organization called L'Arche, founded by a French Catholic named Jean Vanier. It runs homes for young people with cognitive disabilities, developmental disabilities all around the world. I've always felt that love is much more basic to human reality than anything else. Our conceptual values, our intellectual values, they're really quite trivial in comparison with love. I remember in 1988 going out to the medical school at Case Western. I visited a nursing home and I met a man named Jim. And I sat down with Jim. Jim had advanced dementia. He could not understand a word I had spoken to him, but he had a twig in his hand. He put the twig in my hand and he smiled. And it was such a warm, effusive, loving smile that I'll tell you, if love was electric, the building would have been on fire. And I went to the nurse. I asked her, well, what's the story here? And she told me that when Jim was a little boy growing up on a farm in Ohio, he loved his father very, very much. That's where he felt all the comfort, the safety of love. And his father gave him one chore every morning, which was to bring kindling in for the fireplace. And so Jim, then 87 years old, severely demented, had gone back to that time earlier in his life that he most deeply associated with this giving love. Love is the core human reality. If there's a resurrection of a sort for people with dementia, with the deeply forgetful who have lost the temporal glue between past and present and future, who are consigned to the pure present, who really have a disease that is autobiographical, that strips them of the story of their lives, if there's a resurrection there, it's love. And I'm one who has faith in the power of love under any and all circumstances. I fully believe that there is no human situation that cannot be healed through love. You know, running the Institute and bringing science and theology together has been so exciting. I don't want to just pass through a whole litany of activities that have been ongoing over the last 5 years. I will tell you, we've been in about 800 newspaper articles, done every single NPR show and most TV shows. The funniest one for me, I don't know if some of you listen to NPR on Saturday mornings. Do you know the show What Do You Know? With Michael Feldman, who can be a little bit hard to handle. He's a Madisonian, Wisconsin super liberal with an edge. So I had to go on his show. He was airing the show out of the Palace Theater in downtown Cleveland. The night before, I went out to the Chagrin River, one of my favorite rivers in Ohio, and I take prayer walks there. And I asked God, what is Michael Feldman going to ask me about love when I get on his show tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock. And it came to me. He will ask me, now, Dr. Post, what kind of love are we talking about? So I thought to myself, okay, I've got an answer. So the next morning I got on his show, and there were 30 million people in the listening audience. That's the largest audience of any NPR show in America. And sure enough, Michael asked me, now, what kind of love are we talking about? And I said, Michael, the kind of love that gets people helping down in New Orleans after Katrina, the kind of love that makes our otherwise competent medical students great healers, the kind of love that God's supposed to have for all of us. And then I said, the kind of love that I actually feel in this Palace Theater between you and all these wonderful people out there in the seats. And they all started applauding against the sign, of course, which said no applause. And it got out of control, and he spent the next hour asking people all across America what their personal experiences of unlimited love were, how it is that they had experienced love from the nearest and dearest to spirituality to divine love to the big picture of love in the universe. It's been an interesting ride. In that little film clip, one of our researchers is quite well known now for studying the brain and recognizing that when we even make decisions to be helpful under a brain scan, helpful to others in various ways, that part of our brain lights up that's associated with joy. It's the section of the brain that doles out feel-good chemicals like dopamine and serotonin. It's good to be good. We're doing good and we're feeling better. 'Tis better to give than to receive, Acts 20. So I was sitting there, and it was funny when John Stossel asked me, well, look, if that's true, then isn't all generous love just selfishness? And that's when I told him, I said, John, if you want to define selfishness so broadly as to include the warm glow that we feel when we selflessly do unto others, then we need more of it. Would you agree? Right? Would you agree? Would you agree? I mean, I'm going to skip through some materials. I'll simply say that of all the scientific topics that we worked on, I think this notion of it being hardwired within our very biological being to give, I think that's really a crucial point. And I will just touch on a little bit of the science there and invite you to think about it with me in light of your own experiences.